Okay, thank you very much. I will use the microphone. The reason that I asked to introduce the next speaker is that we have a very long history. I am one of those rare amateur owners that has had not only the same farrier, but the same certified journeyman farrier for 30 years. And he is standing right there. We literally pretty much grown up together. He has shod for me in 4 different states. He and his former wife actually moved to the state that I moved to, not because of me. But, so I can tell you that he has a very interesting history. He has a very strong commitment to the vet-farrier relationship and has worked with veterinarians in any number of states in the country where he's been asked to come in and consult. He has clients like me that he has some in Florida, even though he lives in North Carolina. Do you still have some in Pennsylvania?
Virginia.
Yeah, Virginia.
Wisconsin, Iowa.
He runs a very popular site on Facebook called Horses and Symmetry. You might want to check that out. It's grown tremendously over the last couple of years. And he's very, very committed to education and to helping other farriers that want to come along and make their practices better. I know that he's mentored people from Scotland. I have another personal story about him that I think really shows what this industry is like and what AFA farriers, especially the men and women that get certified and understand the learning process and what it's about. When I first moved to Indiana, a long time ago, there was not a farrier of Martin's capability, and I had really nice show horses. So I was bringing him to Indiana, and then my husband's going, that's getting a little expensive. So there was a really nice young guy who was 23, just starting out. He was so shy, he couldn't look you in the eye, but he really, really wanted to learn. So we agreed to spend money to buy him tools, and Martin agreed to mentor him. And I said to Hank at that time, Hank, I don't ever need the money back. I just want you to pay it forward. And I lost track of Hank after a few years because I left Indiana. And then when I became executive director 5 years ago, I'm looking down the list and I see the rules committee chairman, and it's Hank Highfield. And Hank was a former AFT member, the rules committee chairman, and he also now has mentored any number of people, and it started with Martin. So this is the circle, and this is what the AFA is about, and I am really proud to introduce Martin. Thank you.
Now, I got to say, if you're going to tell a story, I have to tell a story. I've got my own mind. You can keep that. One time, I remember Beth had a horse that we had gone to New Bolton Center with for Dr. Moyer, who many of you know. To look at, I don't even remember what for, and it's kind of irrelevant what for. But I do remember her saying, well, you know, Martin's going to be shoeing my horse even when I move to Indiana. And I'll never forget it. Dr. Moyer looks at her and says, well, we all have our crosses to bear. Well, I thank you for coming here. It's not a big group. I didn't expect a big group. It's kind of a different kind of talk compared to what you normally hear at this type of venue. But photography is something that we see on Facebook where people take pictures of horses' feet and they're like, wow, look at what happened, and they'll show you a picture of the feet from last month or 2 months ago or 6 months ago or whatever, and then they'll take a picture of this month and they'll say, do you see the difference? And I'm looking at them and say, absolutely not because they're not better, but because they're totally different angles. And from that, I can't make any judgment at all. I do a lot of national consultation and some international consultation, and before I can even do that, I have to teach the people how to take photos so that I can help them, and so that's what this is about. And it doesn't matter whether you're an industry icon, such as Rick Redden and Steve Crouch. Doesn't matter at all. You know, if you're just a young professional starting out, we all have to do the best to help our horses, and that requires a lot of things. Doesn't matter what type of barn we work in. You know, I work in a lot of these lavish barns, like you see here. I've worked in all these too, so it doesn't really matter where you work. What's important is the approach that we take on everything that we do. We have all kinds of rigs out there. The Volkswagen rig I absolutely love, because one of the guys I went to shooting school actually shot out of a rig exactly like that until his acetylene tank had a leak and the coal forge blew the thing up. But, you know, it doesn't matter what you work out of, you still have to have the same focus on what you're trying to produce. And that doesn't matter whether it's the shoes that you're making, the way you trim the horse, the way you take photographs, it's all very important. You know, I do a lot of flying. Doesn't matter how you get there. If you fly, if you take a horse and buggy and there's a lot of, you know, I hear people say, well, he's just an Amishman. There's a lot of tremendous Amishmen that are very talented, and I have several of them I've had the fortune to be able to work with. And so none of that really matters. What matters is we all have to work together. We have to work together as young farriers and older farriers. We have to work together with the veterinarians, because we all have our own specific part of this whole puzzle. And we have to use the best techniques available to do so, and that includes the photography that we depend upon. It's up to us to be certain that we set ourselves up for success. No one else is going to do it. It's got to be us. I was born here in Tulsa, 1954. I'm back home now, and it's an honor to be here. When I heard they were coming here, I said, I've got to speak in Tulsa because I'm going home. Moved from here in 1968. I was born in this hospital over here in 1954, and that's what it looked like. And to your right, that's what it looks like now. Well, with this kind of a comparison, this type of an angle difference means no difference to them. You can obviously see what the changes are, so it doesn't matter. But there are things that it does matter. Here's Route 66, 11th Street in Tulsa. This is a motel that I remember growing up called the Desert Inn. Okay, there's the Desert Inn still there. But from these two angles, can we tell what's changed? No, but we know it's still there. But we can't tell what's changed. And so it's important that we have the same angles to see what's changed. So why I'm up here? I'm here to make sure that you see what you've been missing. Too many times when you'll take a picture, you'll look at it and you'll think you'll see something, but frankly, you just think you do. You're not really seeing what you think you're seeing, or worse yet, you're missing what you don't know you're missing. Okay, back on the corner of 21st and South Yale, there was a Sears store there at one time. Now there's an amusement park. It doesn't matter on the views, because those are two different views. That doesn't matter for that purpose. But it does matter in the purposes that we have. Here's a perspective of the development of the Oklahoma University Health and Science Center in Oklahoma City. If you study those pictures, you'll notice that every single view is the identical view. I'm sure they took this huge picture and edited it to make sure they have this exact same one. But if you study that picture, you'll see that, for instance, over in the right-hand side of every one, you'll see the same corner. That's important, because that's the only way you can see what the differences are. Here's the exact same pictures where I changed them from different perspectives. Now you can't tell anything. You can't see what happened. It's the same exact pictures, but they're from different perspectives. You put them side by side, and now you can really see the difference. The row on the left-hand side is all the exact same pictures. The row on the right-hand side is the totally same pictures, but they're from different perspectives. So you can't really tell what happened. That's important for us to understand. We look at things from different perspectives than what we should, even if we look at them the same each time. If we're not looking at them the way we should, we still don't get what we need to see. Too many times we're just looking at a picture and we think we know what we see, but we don't. Consistency. It's got to be consistent. It's not an option. Let's take this slide as an example. On your far left-hand side, what we did was, when we did a study that we looked at how the changing of the angle of cameras changed everything. In the center picture was what we call a true lateral. And you'll see the white board on the bottom there that has a line in the middle, and then it has a line to either left or right, 12 degrees from the middle line. So on the left-hand side, we're 12 degrees cranial, or towards the toe, from a true lateral. Well, if we look at that, we see that the dorsal angle is 50.52 degrees, and the heel angle is 41.56. But if we look at the true lateral, which is dead straight on, we see the dorsal angle is 54.47 and the heel angle is 39.37. That's a pretty good difference just by moving it 12 degrees. But here's where it really gets interesting. When you move it caudally, you'll see that the dorsal angle goes up by 2 degrees and the heel angle goes up by roughly 1 degree. So even the changes aren't the same. Depends on what you're looking at. So it's important, extremely important, when we take photographs that we go back and look. Where were we 6 months ago? We are able to accurately compare. If you don't understand your approach, your results will be misleading no matter what. If we look at the picture on the left, that's a toe cranial position oblique. What I mean by that is we are cranially by 12 degrees, and then we're up here like this, taking it at an angle like this. So then what I did was I dropped a line from where the dorsal wall meets the shoe down to where the heel meets the shoe, and we measured that, and we found that the angle that it created at the dorsal wall was 62.23 inches, or 23 degrees. Now when we had a true lateral, and we use those same 2 marker points, meaning where the toe meets the shoe and where the heel meets the shoe, we find that we have a dorsal angle of 57.36. Foot didn't change. We changed what we did with the camera. So it's extremely important. Okay? All aspects of trimming, fitting shoes, like we were listening to here, which was a great talk, all of that stuff is very important. And so is the photography of our work. Too many times we'll come back and we'll look and we'll mislead ourselves by what we see. But we're seeing things that aren't set up with the required skills. This demonstration here was great about showing you how to develop your skills, and that's what hopefully we're going to do here, is show you how important it is to develop your skills. Different angles will blow your perspective in ways you never even dreamed of. What do you think of his feet? I get pictures like this, sent to me. And well, what do you think of his feet? How would you know? There's no way to know what those feet look like. So I simply write back and say, I don't know. Here's an example. I want feet taken, and when you can give those to me, now we'll talk about it. Okay? So it's essential to have proper and, more importantly, or equally as importantly, consistent photography. So the question to yourself is, are your photos helping you? Or are they hindering you? If you're not getting them consistent, they're hindering you because you're seeing things that aren't true. Okay? Perspective's everything. Now, does it look like these pigeons are looking at their cars and they're almost as big as their cars? Well, if I hadn't put the yellow lines in front of the pigeons, you wouldn't realize they're standing on top of the building and obviously the cars are down on the ground. It's perspective. Okay? Is it difficult to do? People say, well, is it difficult to do this? Well, it depends on how you take them, as well as what you take them with. We've had cameras over the years, it started out with a lure of the instant. This camera over here was for instant photography, and they were great, but the pictures lasted all like 6 months, and they were gone. They just disappeared. So instant photography was put on the back burner until recently. In the meantime, we had 35 millimeter, which was great, but did we have the subject in focus? Or was there something in the way of the picture, like the tail got squished at the exact moment you snapped that shutter? Problem with that was, we didn't know till we came back if he had the other foot off the ground, which changed the way this one loaded. So we're really extremely blessed to have the equipment we have today. Unfortunately, we haven't learned how to use the equipment. So our images are often have limited value. Sadly, now we have beautiful work. This is an awfully beautiful job. But the view of this picture is a cranial view of a lateral side. So it's of no value in terms of judging what the foot is set up like. And that's what we're about. If we want to take pictures of how pretty our shoes are, this is nice, this is great. But if we want to use it to collect data and determine where we are now versus where we're going to be in 6 months, this is of no use whatsoever. Okay? People have said that keg shoes have really taken away the mastery of proper shoeing. And that you can make a case for that, or you can't. It depends on your stand on it. But I'd say that's true about cameras, because now we all carry cell phones, and we just whip them out and take pictures. Having only one view is deceiving. A lot of you have probably seen this picture on Facebook. I absolutely love it, because if we only had the top view, we'd think this guy's flipping you off. But if you have the bottom view, that's not what's happening at all. So we need more than one view to know what it is that we're seeing. Are these laterals? No, they're just sides of the foot. Can we glean any honest information when we compare any of them one to the other? If they represent 3 different shoeing cycles, what does that tell us? You know, if the first one is 2 months ago, the second one's last month, and this one's this month, we can't compare them because they're all at different angles. But the problem is, these were all the same foot, taken 3 seconds apart. So we can see in the one to the left that the dorsal angle was 55, whatever it says, I can't read it from here. But that would be one angle, the other angle is 57, and the following one is 62, using the same points I talked about earlier, where the dorsal wall meets the shoe and the heel meets the shoe. And if you use those as your guide, that changes your angles. I'm not saying that's the angle of the wall, I'm saying that's the angle of your perspective. Are these views of any value? Can we be certain that we can duplicate the same angle that we take the picture next visit? I'd have a hard time duplicating any of these angles, but I don't know exactly how they were taken. Does your opinion from this photo on the left change when you look at the center photo or the photo to the right? Does your opinion of that job change with those 3 pictures? It's the same if we even stand differently. So like, we're not taking pictures, and let's say the foot is right here in the middle of this crack, and I'm standing here right in front of it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm getting a pretty good perspective. And I move over here, and I don't even realize it. I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I don't quite like that. Then I'll go over here, and I'll look at it, and I don't quite like that. Well, it's because we're taking different perspectives. I gave a class on this at the International Hip Care Summit in 2016, and I remember Bob Smith was in that class. And he came up to me afterward, he says, you know, I learned a very important thing that helps me with my teaching. I said, great, Bob, what's that? He says, I'm standing next to Sam, you know, Sam's taking my course, and I say to him, can't you see that? And Sam says, no, I don't see it. He said, now I know why. Sam's not standing here, he's standing here. We don't see the same thing. So it's important that you learn how to take photography. It's also important that you learn how to set yourself up so that you always look at that foot exactly the same way. Know what you want to observe. Set yourself up to get it. This is the way we generally take pictures. You know, we might squat down and take the picture that way. We might stand up here and take the picture that way with our cell phone cameras. But we're not getting an honest view. We're getting a view down this direction. That doesn't tell us a whole lot. Think about the balance of the image. In the picture on the left, I'm taking the picture holding the camera on the ground. The camera is leaning at an angle. It's not like this. So when I'm taking the picture, it's shooting down through the foot instead of horizontally through the foot. Now on the picture to the right, I'm not only doing that, but I've got it twisted a little bit, so I'm taking the picture somewhere between the first nail hole and the center of the dorsal wall, so that view actually is going through that foot and coming out the medial bulb. So I'm not getting a true picture of what I'm looking at. Know your equipment. Here I'm using a cell phone, and I'm holding it perfectly vertical. I've got it set right on the ground. You think, this is it. This is perfect. Here's the problem. In my camera, the lens is up here. So when I do that, I'm actually zeroed in above the cornet band. So if I'm going to use my camera on my cell phone, I turn my camera around. So now the lens is down here. I'm shooting right through that foot now. Think about that when you're using your cell phone cameras, if you use your cell phone cameras. Where's the lens? It's extremely important. Backdrops are extremely important. They're not an option. You've got to have a backdrop. If you look at the picture on your left, you can see, you can see that foot pretty nice, but you can see the one on the right with the backdrop. You can see things a whole lot better. You can zero in. This is even a better case of that. You see how on the one on the left, you can see over to the right, you see some light, and over on the left, you see the background of the stall over there or whatever. So your eyes aren't focusing. When you have a backdrop in it, you are focusing on your backdrop. What that piece of white is that's an old mud flap. And I just cut a section out of it and hold it behind it. Something white to hold behind it. How many sides of the feet are there? 4 sides. So why do we only take 2 views? We need to see the entire foot. Develop a systematic protocol, and you won't miss anything. By that I mean, when I'm going to take a picture of a foot, this is how I do it. I take a lateral side, I take a DP, I take a medial side, and I go around and take it on the heel. Every single time. I don't think about it. It's just what I do. Just like when you're shoeing horses, you don't think about, I need to grab that clincher, I need to grab that rasp. You just do it because those are the patterns you do it in. So if you take pictures enough, you'll develop a system so you don't think about it. It takes no time whatsoever. You'll see things in one view that you may have missed in other views. All too often, other perspectives will alter your decision. As an example, if we're looking at a foot from the toe out the DP view, you may think, okay, I know exactly what I need to do. But if we take the same shot from the other side, meaning from the heels, that may alter what you're thinking. So take those views. Very few people take those views. It's not physically possible without photography to get these views. It's not possible unless you're stupid enough to lay your head on the ground. That's the only way you're going to get that view. So don't do that. I don't suggest it. Cameras are a lot cheaper. Cell phones are great for general information. If I wanted to look at what's going on here for the pathology that's going on around the lamina, you bet. They're great for that. Pull it out, take a shot, so when you come back next time, you can take a shot of that and say, yeah, it's gotten worse, no, it's gotten better, or nothing's happened. They're great for that. But for data collection, they're useless. So if you intend to collect data, leave your cell phone as your truck. Learn how to take photos that will assist you instead of simply recording general information. We look at how important backdrops are. Lighting can make or break it. Look at the difference here. On the one on the left, we've got sunlight shining on part of the foot, not on the other part of the foot. This is a place, ironically, that has a lot of horses that I could take a lot of tremendous pictures of because they get a lot of pathological issues coming through there. But this is a shed row barn, and when I go there, the sun is always shining on that side of the barn. I can't take pictures there for squat. There's nowhere for me to take them to get them out of the sun, so I miss them. Now, the one on the right, we used a backdrop, but what good was that? There was sun shining in the back door. It bleached everything out. When I built my facility, I have 12 foot of sliding doors at the end of my aisleway, and I want to put windows in there. And I got cheap and decided not to put them in, and I'm so glad that I didn't, because in the afternoon the sun shines in that way. So I closed the doors, so now I get good pictures. Had I put windows in there, I'd have screwed up my whole system. So make sure you don't have backdrops, and don't be afraid to walk over and say, man, I got to pull these doors, let me take these pictures, we'll open them back up. I do that all the time. So how do we get reliable information? First, you have to make certain your location is set up right for results. Close the doors if you have to. Move the horse if you have to. Just like great shoeing doesn't just happen, you have to ensure that it happens with your photography. You have to set yourself up for success, not failure. Develop a protocol. In the center, this center picture here, this is where my subject is. And this is where I'm moving my camera around, like I spoke before. Lateral, toe, medial, heel. It doesn't take long. Just takes less than a minute. Have a way to quickly record which foot it is, as easy as well as whether it's a medial or lateral branch. You'll see on the left picture, I've got a thin platform that I have written lateral. So when I set the horse's foot on it, I put the lateral side on the lateral, obviously. And so when I go around the block, on my block it says lateral, medial, and then on the front of it, on the lateral side it has L, on the medial side it has N, and on the heel side it has the same. So when I take the picture, there's a recording right there. Boom, this is lateral, medial. I don't have to think about it. It does another thing for me too. Since I know which is lateral, I know which foot it is. And I'm taking the front and the back. Now the picture on the right, that's a pretty simple device that all of you can make. Print out a sheet of paper on your printer that has LF, RF, L-Hine, and right Hine or RH on each one. And then put a crosshair on either side, and I'll explain that in a bit. And then you lay that on top of one of those magnets that you put your business cards on, sticks right on there, cut them out. They'll stick to the shoe. They'll even hang there on a clinch. So you can stick it on the side of the foot. They'll hang on the clinch. They're cheap, they're easy, and they work very well. In 1 year, I took over 86,000 photos. I took an average of 16 views 3 times on every horse that I shot. I took it before I shot him, I took it after I trimmed him, and I took it after I shot him. I had less than 30 minutes a day, having a protocol and a system on how to do it. So again, if you're set up to do it, it doesn't take you long, but you can get a tremendous amount of data. And what was great when I did that specific year was I learned a whole lot about what I thought I knew that I didn't know. What I thought I was seeing that I realized I didn't see, because now I had accurate data. You have to have a way to calibrate your photos if you're going to use a computer program such as Metron, which I use a lot of. The device on your left, you'll see the 2 dotted lines, one at each end. Those are 9 centimeters apart. I know that. When I put it in my program, I can tell the computer program this spot and this spot are 9 centimeters apart. From that, the computer can generate linear measurements. On the one on the right, that's the little piece of magnet I talked about earlier. It has the crosshairs on it. Those crosshairs are 1.25 inches apart. I can tell Metron that's what it is. From there, it can generate any linear measurement I want. Simple things. So you've got to have something to calibrate if you're going to use Metron. Okay, you just set up that'll help you to properly align your camera. It'll keep you safe. It'll keep your camera safe. The unit on the left is a simple homemade device that I made out of plastic lumber. Actually, a client of mine had did a bunch of plastic lumber inside of her stalls, and these were cut-offs, and it was down in Wellington. So I filled up my suitcase and brought them home and made a bunch of these and given them to guys, sold them to guys, whatever. But my camera that I use is a thumb screw at the bottom of that device that screws into the tripod hole for my camera. So when I pick that unit up, the camera goes with it. And you'll notice how the piece goes over top of the camera, so if a horse was to happen to jump to the side, my camera's protected. It's going to take a lot for them to hurt that camera. Ipana has come out with this device on the right for your cell phone camera. I personally have not physically seen it. Kind of looks like a good idea, but I can't give you any advice on it because I've never physically seen it. But what it does is it uses a mirror device that your cell phone shoots a picture through that mirror that's off in the right-hand end of it, and that focuses in. Again, I don't know how that works, but that's a new device that's out. Make sure your horse is standing square. I don't know how many times I've had consultation photos sent to me, and they're like, well, what do you think of his feet? Well, first off, he's standing square here, but look where he's standing. He's standing in the dirt. What do I know what his feet look like? Or they'll get these. He's standing square, but what good is that? Make sure your horse is standing on a level surface. If that means drag out a piece of old rubber mat and lay him on that, I don't care. Something so that I can see exactly what's on the bottom edge, how the feet are standing. You can't tell anything with a setup like that. Make certain that the head is straight. That's important, and we'll look at that in a little bit. And that you're in line with the subject matter. Now, if I'm going to look at this horse in terms of conformation and how it's going to help me determine what I'm going to how I'm going to approach the shoeing situation, the yellow dot would indicate where I want to have my camera pointed toward this horse to get the overall confirmation. The person that took that picture, his focus is more just ahead of the shoulder. Well, if you took that picture and sent it to me to evaluate what's going on with the horse, it's of no value to me. So make sure you're focusing on what you need to focus on. His head is cocked to the right. Again, we'll look at that in a little bit and show you what a difference it makes. So he wants to have his head straight. So in other words, think. Don't just say, okay, let me take a picture of him quick. You have to think. Make certain the center of your subject is the focus. Is the focus that you're looking at. There's a yellow dot on each of those, or a yellow star, or whatever it is. Have it in make sure you're focusing on the center of what your subject matter is. That's the important thing. Okay, we're talking about photography, but the exact same thing is true with radiology. Resident Farrier Doug Russo out in Iowa State University, he provided this look at positioning the effects on radiology. On the three pictures on the left, that was where they used 1 foot on a block, 2 feet on blocks, and 1 foot on block, the other foot in the air. And you can see by looking at the x-rays underneath just what that change did to the alignment of the bone structure. Well, that does the same thing when we're talking about photography, because obviously if those bones are changing, it's changing how the task unloads, and that changes what we're looking at. Then even more interesting is when you look at the frame on the right, you see where all three shots are taken with both feet on blocks, but all they did was move the head of the horse. And look what it did on the alignment of the bone structure. So if I'm looking at a horse to determine how things are looking in terms of what I want to do with the shoeing, and the horse has got his head over here, that's not telling me anything. So you have to make sure that you help your handlers understand exactly how they're holding this horse to assist you. So with Dr. Tukey Myers, good friend of mine, Farrier Hall of Fame, good guy, he's a farrier as well. He and I spent a lot of time together, so we collected data. And again, we go back to the earlier slide where I show how I set this thing up. The middle photo being what we would call a true lateral. The left one would be a cranial, or more toward the toe by 12 degrees, and the right one would be a caudal, which is more toward the heel by 12 degrees. You'll see that they're all sitting on a line that we saw before, and you also see ahead of my jig, between the foot and the jig, there's a red piece of aluminum sticking out through there, so we know that our distance is identical in every shot. And we put a yellow spot on the cadaver so that piece of metal is touching that yellow spot with every view we took. What we found was some pretty incredible things. It really blew me away. We discovered that without proper setup, we can't truly and honestly analyze our work at all. First thing we did, we set a standard, which we talked about earlier. We're pointing it at a same exact spot. The jig is exactly the same distance from the horse, or in this case the cadaver. And on the surface we're set up on, we have a true lateral. We have 12 degrees cranial and 12 degrees caudal. So we have specific things that we can duplicate every time. So after we took the views, then what we did with this cadaver was we used the hardware that was on the cadaver. At the toe, there was a screw eye there. There was a hinged cadaver. So we used that as our constant. At the heel, there was a screw there where the hinge was that we had taken off, and we used that as our constant. So we put these 4 yellow lines on there with each view using those constants. Came off the screw eye and followed the non-distorted dorsal wall and kept on going down until we hit the ground. We did the same thing from the screw at the heel, and then we connected those 2 dots at the top, and then of course we had our ground surface. So those were our known constants. Then we put them into the Metron and we started gathering data. And what we found was that with the true lateral, the hoof angle was 41.28 degrees. With the cranial, it jumped to 49 degrees. degrees plus. With the caudal, it was 36 degrees. Big difference just by moving 12 degrees from true lateral. Now you're starting to understand why it's important. So then we did the same thing, and we measured our heel angle. We actually made what we called a simulated Palmer angle. And by that I mean we took our screw at the heel, we dropped the line down to where our dorsal wall line hit the ground. And that became our simulated dorsal angle. In other words, we don't know where the coffin bone is in this picture, so we simulated one. Okay, so you can see here that just by changing location from true lateral, which we got a 12 degree true lateral, and then we went to a cranial lateral, we got a 12. Well, that's not too bad. But look what happened when we went to a Palmer, we had 14 degrees. By going from true lateral to cranial, we didn't change much. But when we changed to caudal, we changed by 2 degrees. When you're talking a Palmer angle of somewhere vicinity of 5, when you can change it 2 degrees, that's pretty phenomenal. Okay? So then we looked at linear measurements. And we looked at the dorsal wall length at the true lateral was 3.40 degrees. When we used the cranial, it was 3.20, and the caudal was 3.37. So that wasn't, a big difference, a little difference, not a big difference. The heel wall length, however, went from 1.77 to the cranial side, 1.43. But this is where it gets really interesting. You go to the caudal, and now we jump clear up to 2.03. Again, just by changing the camera. Sole length, I'm sorry. That's where the heel line and the toe line, the dorsal toe line, hit the ground. We measured that distance between those two. And we went from 4.36 to the true lateral to 4.17 to the cranial, which again isn't real big, but look at the caudal, the one to the right. That jump clear down to 3.04 simply by moving our camera. So again, we go back to this. If I'm looking at this foot at a true lateral, I got one thing. But if the toe's over here, and I step just this much, everything's different by a lot. Next, we looked at the effects of DP view, taken at 3 different angles of the toe. You'll see the lines on the whiteboard on the bottom at the 3 different angles we used. What I want you to notice before we go farther is you'll notice on the hoof capsule, I drew a green line across from the widest part of the lateral side versus the widest part of the medial side. You'll see that green line obviously does not go straight across that foot. It's important to understand that as we go forward. And so I'm doing that, and I'm also taking a picture with my camera, and that one, again, I'm not taking it a true DP. I've got my camera at a little bit like this. So how does that affect everything when we do all this? Well, we usually overlook this view. We go to take a picture or x-ray or whatever you have from a DP view, and we don't take into consideration this green line that's on this capsule. It's extremely important. Here's why. In the true lateral, which is in the middle, we see that the lateral side, which is to the left, is what I'm calling the lateral side, we have a 78.72 degrees. On the medial, we have a 72.12 degrees. And you look at the foot, it ain't that bad a foot. Why is there that much difference? Well, it's quite simple. Remember the green line? I'm picking up the widest part of the foot closer to the toe on the lateral side than what I am on the medial side, because it's an asymmetrical foot. Well, when I take a view 12 degrees to the left or to the lateral side, it goes the lateral side goes up to 78.33 and the medial side 68.25. Well, the reason that the medial side drops so much is because now I'm not even seeing the widest part of the foot, because it's taken it at such an angle that it's not even seeing it. That's back beyond the camera's view, so you're not even catching it. So then we go to the right-hand picture, and now I'm 12 degrees to the right of true DP, and we see that the medial side, which is to your right, has jumped up to 73.23, and the lateral side is 75.65. Well, that's kind of interesting. Why is the lateral side not that much different than when we took some of the other views? Well, it's because the whitest part of that is closer to the toes, so we're still picking part of that up. So again, it goes back to this. What are we seeing here? And are we visualizing this looking straight down through the foot? Because that's all important. Angles change as well as distances just by how we hold the camera. I'm not going to go through all these numbers, but you can see by looking at them how the different angles are. And what I did was I used the point of the heel to the apex of the frog to develop that triangle that comes through the central sulcus. And just by looking at them, you can see the differences. Same thing here. And now all I'm doing is I'm just moving how the camera is, just a little bit. Those are all 1 foot, taken 6 different times within seconds, because we're not being careful of how we're holding our cameras. So then we go back and we go to analyze our work, and we're like, holy mackerel, what did I do there? Or holy mackerel, did that improve? But we don't know if it did or not, if we're not taking them right. So we have to be absolutely certain that things are lined up correctly and repeatable every single time. As we pointed out earlier with radiology, you've got to get what you need, but you've got to speak up to do it. By that I mean, when you're going to set the pictures up, if you've got help there, or if you don't have help there, you've got to ask for help so that you can make sure things are set up correctly. Or in the case of radiology, you have to dictate to the veterinarian what you need. Be absolutely certain things are lined up correctly and repeatable every single time. Key is knowing what's required. If you don't know what's required, you're not going to get it. And then you have to ensure that you get it. A client of mine told me this story not too long ago. She said, man, the vet was up here and I was telling him exactly how you want it, and I know how you want it. I've seen enough of what you do. And he'd take the picture and I'd look at it and I said, no, that ain't what he wants. And she said, he was getting really irritated. And so she pulled out, I do a written report on a lot of the stuff I do and send it to the owners. And she had one of my written reports there. And she handed it to him. She said, look, Doc, this is why he wants what he wants. Now, he didn't read the whole report, but he looked at it, and this is exactly what he said. Man, Martin takes a scientific approach. Okay, let's get what he needs. Now he understood. I spoke up through her. She spoke up. So that's important. We can't just say we want an X-ray. We want to say we want an X-ray. We want to make sure it's a true lateral. We want to make sure that the result that I get does not show both branches of the shoe in the image. Because if we do, it's not a true view. We need to be able to express those things and express why it's important. Okay. The next thing we did was we used the same variable we had before. We added one more thing. You can see that now the jig's sitting on a platform that has 12 degrees of elevation. A lot of X-rays are taken this way. I see X-rays handed to me where I can see not only a little bit of both branches, but I can see both branches with air between both branches, and that's why, because the X-ray machine is set up like that. Okay? So finally we duplicated all these variables and we shortened the distance. Notice that little red rod that was in front of my jig before? I cut it down and made it shorter. So now we're doing the exact same thing all over again, but we're adding one more variable, and that is we're moving our camera closer. You say, well, why would that make a difference? Well, how these computer programs work is they don't really measure anything. You tell them that this distance to this distance is 9 centimeters, and it will tell itself this many pixels is 9 centimeters. Well, when you change distances, you're changing that calculation. I don't understand how it works. You can talk to him at Metron because he kind of explained it to me, but I didn't understand it. But nonetheless, it's very important. Okay? So we took the same setup and we added radiographs to the mix. So we had a true lateral, 12 degrees caudal, and 12 degrees cranial, all the true horizontal. Then we added X-ray using the same distance from the subject to the X-ray generator as what the camera was. On this X-ray on the right, you'll see two metal spheres, and you probably saw them in some of the doc's earlier X-rays. And what those are is those spheres are 9 centimeters apart, and then you can tell the computer those are 9 centimeters apart, and from there, like I said, it can generate linear measurements. Without it, it can do nothing. This device on the bottom has this, the X-ray is actually using this device that's on the bottom. It has those metal spheres, and the exterior of it has the dotted line. They're both identically 9 centimeters apart. So photographs, you can generate 9 centimeters. X-rays, you can generate 9 centimeters. By the way, we make this and sell it. If anybody's interested, wanted to get a hold of it. I give one of those to all my clients that I think would possibly use them, and they keep them in their barns. So when they're ready for an X-ray, they get it out and they say, "Oh, can I teach them how to use it?" And I say, "I want it here, and I want it there." I teach them how to use it, and that's where that one girl got the thing with the vet. The vet said, "Why are you using that thing?" She said, "Why he needs it." "Well, why does he need it?" And that's when she pulled out the reporting. Okay, he's using science. Let's get him what he wants. So actually, that kind of a tool actually helps put you into a little better perspective. Wow, he needs this for a specific purpose. Okay. So then we took 3 different lateral views with the X-ray equipment. Those views would be true lateral, 12 degrees caudal, and 12 degrees cranial. We added variables. Adding variables can and will create confusion and miscommunication between vets and farriers. Here's why. Just changing the distance from the subject, we can see the heel angles with 6 different values. That would be the true lateral is the blue lines. The green lines are the caudal lateral, and the brownish ones are the cranial lateral. Oh, I'm sorry. Are the cranial lateral. But we're not going to go through the numbers. You can readily see by looking at the bar graphs how many changes we got by changing the location of the camera, by changing the distance of the camera from the subject, and by changing the fact that the camera was or was not perfectly horizontal. And you can just see how the numbers jump all over the place. But what does that do when we're looking at our photographs and or X-rays, when we're trying to determine what to do in some of these more complex cases? Finally, when we use radiology, we see we get one more set of variables. And remember, this isn't a live subject, so it's not that the horse moved. That cadaver didn't move. He's there. Okay. So again, we've got this is from X-rays, and we've got on the X-rays on the right, on the far right is a flat X-ray, and on the far left is a long view of photographs. The next one to it is a short view of photographs, and then the next 2 are using the 12-degree vertical variation. So you can see what it does to all the numbers. So it's extremely important. Okay, we use static markings on the hoof to ensure stability. Repeatability, like I told you before. We use specific hardware on the animal or on the cadaver to measure from. So we looked at that, and we looked at lack of consistency by moving our camera, moving our X-ray equipment around, and we saw how the variables jumped around. Again, I'm not going to bore you with all the numbers. You can see it just by looking at how many different variables we get, taking the same view just with a little bit of variable in it. So it's extremely important. Oftentimes we use percentage of toe of the ground surface as a guide to help us shoot. We talked about that this morning. Without accurate measurements getting that information, we're kidding ourselves. Because if things are not lined up correctly and they're saying, well, okay, you need to move it to here because you've got this percent versus that percent. Well, if it's not a true lateral, what good is it? It's not going to give you what you need. So we have to not only do it right with our cameras, but we have to get into where we can let the professionals with the veterinary equipment understand what we need and why we need it. And they'll give it to you if we can show them why we need it. Okay. Next, we looked at the X-rays themselves, and we looked at the dorsal coffin angle. When we looked at a simulated palmar angle, by simulated I mean the yellow line we took from the wing of the coffin bone down to where we intersected with the dorsal wall line. That way we had something consistent every single time, because that's a distorted talking mode, so we had to have something that we could repeat every time. And when we did that, we're finding that, again, if you look at the taller graph there, that's the dorsal wall, and you can see that the numbers don't match up, just by our variables. And on the heel, or on the simulated palmar angle, again, you can see a big difference. There's like 6 degrees difference, which is pretty phenomenal when we're looking at not 3 to 5, maybe 6 degrees that we're trying to achieve. So there's a 2.5 degree spread in the dorsal palmar angle, but a 6 degree spread in the palmar angle. Hopefully now you can see that you're only taking photos. We can't simply stand and look at feet. We have to know how to stand, where to stand, so we can reproduce it every single time we come back. No matter what you do, set yourself up for success, not mediocrity. If all we do is point and shoot, we're just not getting the results we think. So I hope this helped you, and thank you very much for your time.